For 3 years, I was her doormat. Only now do I realize I was just a tool she used to make her platonic best friend jealous. She'd peel shrimp for him, then tell me not to be so sensitive. She'd buy him new sneakers, then ask me to cover the bill. Liam, he's my best friend. Don't be so petty. I finally snapped. Right in front of her, I turned around and started laying the charm on her stunning best friend. When she flew into a rage and threatened to break up, I agreed without missing a beat. Delete, block, the whole 9 yards. Then I immediately asked her friend out on a date. My ex was floored. Liam, come back. It was always you I loved. I just wrapped my arm around my new girlfriend's waist. Sorry, I'm her man now. 1. Sophie, these shrimp are amazing. Your favorite. I smiled, rotating the lazy Susan to slide the steaming platter of Cajun, peeling each shrimp directly in front of Chloe. I even gave a little nudge, making sure the biggest, plumpest ones were facing her. She didn't even glance my way. With a flick of her wrist, she spun the platter right back around. Chad, you have to try these. This place is famous for their shrimp. I ordered them just for you. A dazzling smile bloomed on Chloe's face as she expertly tonged 3 of the largest shrimp and dropped them onto the plate of the guy sitting next to her. Chad, her suppose, grew up in diapers together, best friend. My hand, holding a fork midway to the platter, froze awkwardly in midair. The table fell quiet. Across from me, my buddy Matt shot me a look, his eyebrows raised in a silent question. Dude again, what the hell was I supposed to say? I slowly retracted my fork and stabbed at a limp piece of lettuce in my salad. Chloe either didn't notice the sudden tension, or she simply didn't care. She leaned in close to Chad, her voice dripping with a sweetness she never used on me. Want me to peel them for you? You're so clumsy with your hands, you'll poke yourself. Chad let out a smug chuckle, actually sliding his plate closer to her. You're the best, Chloe. I watched, my stomach twisting into a knot, as my girlfriend, whose hands I had just lotioned and meticulously cared for an hour ago, began to peel shrimp for another man. She was painstakingly thorough, even deveining each one perfectly. There you go, she said, placing the glistening, pink meat onto his plate with a look of pure, tender affection. I felt a tightness in my chest, like I just swallowed a whole lobster, shell and all. Chad shot a triumphant smirk in my direction, the look of victory practically spilling from his eyes. He popped a shrimp into his mouth, chewing loudly. Incredible. Shrimp peel by Chloe just hit different. Flushed with pleasure from the compliment, Chloe proceeded to load up his plate with all the best items from the table. This is good too, and you'll love this. Take your time. No one's gonna fight you for it. And just like that, the prime cuts of every dish on the table ended up piled high on Chad's plate. Mine, by contrast, was a barren wasteland, save for the few sad vegetables I'd served myself earlier. The atmosphere at the table grew even more strained. My friends were now deeply engrossed in their phones or chugging their sodas, avoiding eye contact at all costs. This dinner was suffocating me. After Chad had eaten his fill, he wiped his mouth, finally bestowing his attention upon me with a condescending, faux concerned tone. Chloe's the greatest. Hey, Liam, he paused for dramatic effect. You're not mad, are you? Before I could answer, Chloe jumped in, waving a dismissive hand. Oh, please. What would he be mad about? Liam's not that petty. She finally turned to look at me, her expression one of utter entitlement. Chad's my best friend. It's not like you don't know that. In that moment, looking at Chloe's self-righteous face and Chad's smirking one, hearing the awkward silence ringing in my ears, something I had been carefully holding together inside me for 3 long years finally shattered. To hell with her best friend, and to hell with not being mad. 2. Liam, don't just sit there. Can't you see Chad's out of beer? Go grab him another one. Chloe's voice snapped me out of my daze. She hadn't even looked at me, her eyes still glued to Chad's smug, smiling face. I nearly snapped my fork in half. She wanted me to get Chad a beer. The same jackass who was currently enjoying the VIP shrimp peeling service for my girlfriend? Suddenly, a highlight reel of the last 3 years of humiliation flashed through my mind. On my birthday, I waited in line for 2 hours at a trendy bakery to buy her favorite cake, but she bailed to take a sniffling Chad to urgent care. Over the phone, she'd said, Chad's all alone and miserable. You understand, right? You're always so generous. Generous, my ass. On Valentine's Day, We were literally walking in the movie theater, tickets in hand, when Chad called, whining that some girl had ghosted him and he needed a drinking buddy. She dragged me out of the theater, left me on the curb, and spent the night getting wasted with him. I waited in the cold for 2 hours like an idiot, only to be told he's my best friend. If I'm not there for him now, who will be? Don't be so difficult. Difficult? You've got to be kidding me. And then there was the time I had a 102-degree fever, so sick I could barely move. I begged her to pick up some medicine for me. She said she would, but then disappeared for the entire afternoon. When she finally showed up that evening, she told me Chad's cat had run away and she'd been helping him look for it. Seeing me flushed and sweating, she actually had the nerve to get annoyed. Why didn't you just order something on DoorDash? Can't you handle one little thing by yourself? Holy crap. In Chloe's world, any minor inconvenience for Chad was a 5-alarm fire, while my actual emergencies were nothing. He, my best friend, was her get-out-of-jail-free card, a shield she used to deflect all of my feelings and needs. I must have been brainwashed, thinking her behavior was some kind of noble loyalty. I'd actually told myself, stupidly, that to love her meant accepting all of her baggage. Except this, I wasn't her boyfriend. I was the ultimate chump. Liam, did you hear me? Get going. Chloe demanded, finally turning to me when I didn't move. Her brow was furrowed in annoyance, as if I owed Chad $1 million. Chad leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other and lifting his chin at me. His smugness was off the charts, his expression screaming, "See, your girlfriend does what I want." The eyes of everyone else at the table felt like needles on my skin. Some held pity, some morbid curiosity, and some were clearly trying to stifle a laugh. I looked at Chloe's entitled face, then at Chad's gloating smirk. The fire that had been smoldering inside me for 3 years finally erupted. To hell with your best friend. To hell with being generous and not being petty. Today, I'm being petty. Watch me. 3. Chloe's "get going" was still hanging in the air, a grating demand that hammered at my skull. Chad, the smug bastard, had his leg bouncing with triumphant energy, a grin stretching across his face like he was some feudal lord waiting for a servant. The rest of the table had their heads buried in their plates, desperately trying to become invisible. The old me would have swallowed his pride, stood up like a good little lapdog, and fetched the beer. But not today. To hell with that. The last spark of my patience ignited into a wildfire. But on my face, an unexpected, genuine laugh burst out. It wasn't a fake laugh. It was the sound of a man realizing he had been the world's biggest idiot. My sudden laughter stunned everyone into silence. Chloe's scowl deepened. Liam, what are you laughing at? Have you lost your mind? Chad's smug expression faltered, replaced by confusion. I ignored them both. My gaze swept across the table and landed on a girl sitting next to me. Her name was Sophie, I think. She was a friend Chloe had invited, and she'd been quietly eating her meal, staying out of the psychodrama. She was incredibly easy on the eyes, with a calm, composed demeanor that was a world away from Chloe's grating theatrics. Most importantly, she had a tiny smudge of sauce at the corner of her mouth she hadn't noticed. Opportunity knocked. In an instant, my entire demeanor shifted. The cold fury I felt toward Chloe and Chad vanished, replaced by a warm, gentle expression. I leaned slightly toward Sophie. Oh, hey, I said, my voice soft and tinged with a playful, affectionate tone. You got a little something. You're making a mess. As the entire table watched, jaws practically on the floor, I smoothly plucked a napkin from the dispenser and, with a light touch, gently dabbed the corner of her mouth. My fingertips barely grazed her skin, the perfect balance of intimacy without being creepy. Sophie froze, her eyes widening slightly as her long lashes fluttered. A blush crept up her fair cheeks, spreading all the way to her ears. She flinched back instinctively, her gaze a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Her eyes darted from me to Chloe's thunderous expression and back again. I held her gaze, my own eyes sending a silent message. Just go with it. This girl was sharp. After a split second of hesitation, the surprise in her eyes melted away, replaced by a flicker of understanding and amusement. A small smile played on her lips. Instead of pulling away, she lowered her gaze shyly, her voice soft and sweet. Oh, thanks. I was so focused on the food, I didn't even realize. Bingo. An Oscar-worthy performance. I wanted to give her a standing ovation. I didn't stop there. I picked up the nearby pitcher and refilled her empty glass with iced tea, my voice the epitome of caring. Take your time. No one's going to rush you. See anything else you like? I can spin it over for you if you can't reach. The silence in the room was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. I could practically hear Matt across from me, sucking in a sharp breath. Chloe's face was a work of art. It went from pale to flushed red to a sickly shade of green, like a malfunctioning traffic light. Her eyes were wide, fixed on me as if I were a complete stranger. Chad's smugness had evaporated, his face as dark as the bottom of a skillet. He uncrossed his legs and sat bolt upright, his gaze flicking between me, Sophie, and an utterly shell-shocked Chloe. Everyone else was just plain stunned. Forks hovered in midair, mouths were left agape. The plot had taken a turn their brains couldn't process. Yes, this was exactly the effect I wanted. The bitter resentment that had been poisoning me for 3 years finally had a release valve. It felt incredible. Absolutely, fantastically incredible. Chloe finally snapped out of her stupor and slammed her hand on the table with a loud bang that made everyone jump. Liam, what the hell do you think you're doing? Chloe's shriek could have shattered glass. It was so shrill it made my ears ring. Everyone at the table flinched, their heads whipping toward her and then back to me, the tension in the room stretched taut like a bowstring. I slowly turned my head to face her, my expression a perfect mask of pure, unadulterated innocence. I even blinked a few times, as if I couldn't possibly comprehend why she was so upset. I said, my tone utterly casual. What's wrong, Chloe? What did I do? What did you do? She seethed, her chest heaving as she pointed a trembling finger at my face. What was that? Why were you wiping her mouth and pouring her a drink? Her eyes were bulging with a toxic cocktail of shock, rage, and a profound sense of betrayal, as if I had just committed an unforgivable crime against humanity. Beside her, Chad, having recovered from his paralysis, chimed in, his face a grimace of disapproval. Liam, that's seriously messed up. Chloe's sitting right here, and you're hitting on some other girl? Oh, the irony was rich. This guy had the audacity to talk about what was messed up? When she was peeling shrimp and piling food onto your plate, you didn't seem to have a problem. But I wipe a smudge off someone's face and pour some iced tea. And suddenly I'm the villain. A cold smirk formed in my mind, but I kept my face a blank slate of confusion. I even furrowed my brow to enhance the effect, glancing back and forth between Chloe and Chad. Then, as if a light bulb had just switched on, I said, "Oh, you mean this?" I gestured towards Sophie, my tone as light and breezy as if I were discussing the weather. I saw Sophie had a little sauce on her mouth and figured she couldn't see it, so I gave her a hand. What's the big deal? Sophie played her part to perfection, ducking her head and hunching her shoulders slightly, looking like an innocent bystander caught in a hurricane. A true master of her craft. My response left Chloe speechless for a second. Her face flushed in even deeper shade of red. A hand? You call that giving a hand? Why did you use that disgusting tone of voice? Disgusting. I scratched my head, leaning into my role as the purely innocent boyfriend. I thought it sounded pretty normal. I mean, I learned it from the best, Chloe. I paused, letting the silence hang for a beat before I looked her straight in the eye and dropped the bomb. You're the one who loves taking care of people, right? Especially your best friend, Chad. I put a special emphasis on best friend. I mean, look at how carefully you peeled his shrimp. You even deveined them. You picked out all the best pieces of every dish for him. I was just trying to follow your example, to embrace that same spirit of being helpful and thoughtful. So what's the problem? I finished, tilting my head with an expression of sincere curiosity. It's the same gesture. Why is it okay for you to do it, but not for me? Your standards seem a little inconsistent, Chloe. Uffed. I could have sworn I heard someone across the table try to disguise a snort as a cough. Chloe's face instantly drained of all color, going from crimson to a ghostly white. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked like she'd been punched in the gut, or had swallowed a fly she couldn't spit out. Chad's expression was just as foul. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he couldn't find the words. The room was deathly quiet, and in that silence, I felt a wave of pure, unadulterated satisfaction wash over me. Giving them a taste of their own medicine was sweeter than I ever could have imagined. Chloe's face cycled through a whole spectrum of colors, a chaotic mess of rage and humiliation. Her chest rose and fell in ragged breaths, the fingers she was pointing at me trembling. "Liam," she finally shrieked, her voice cracking under the strain. "You're being irrational. This is insane." She was panting, her eyes practically shooting flames as she glared at me. This was her go-to move. Whenever she was losing an argument, or simply wanted to steamroll me into submission, she'd pull out the hysterics. And right on cue, the line I had heard at least 100 times, the one loaded with all her righteous indignation and the hollow threat she thought was her trump card, came crashing down. "If you're going to be like this, then there's no point. We're done. You hear me? We are breaking up." As she spat out the word, breaking up, she lifted her chin, her eyes filled with the smug certainty of a battle already won. She knew my script by heart. In her mind, this was the part where I was supposed to panic, to instantly grovel and beg for her forgiveness. "Chloe, I'm so sorry. Don't be mad. It's all my fault. I'll never do it again. Please don't leave me." Then she would magnanimously accept my apology after making me sweat, and I would be grateful for her mercy, resuming my role as the perfect doormat. Chad, leaning back with his arms crossed, had that sickening, gloating smirk back on his face. He, too, thought the game was over and was just waiting to watch my pathetic display of desperation. The rest of the table held their breath, their eyes darting between us, waiting for the familiar drama to play out. The air was thick with anticipation, everyone expecting me to bow my head in defeat. Seeing my lack of an immediate response, Chloe must have thought I needed another push. She added, her tone dripping with condescension, "Apologize now, Liam, and maybe we can forget this happened." I looked at her face, twisted with a mixture of anger and absolute confidence, and suddenly found it hilarious and deeply pathetic. I felt a surge of pity for the spineless version of myself who had put up with this for so long. I took a deep breath, and then, slowly and very clearly, I said one word, "Okay." It wasn't loud. In fact, it was almost calm. But in the dead silent room, it landed like a thunderclap. The victorious expression on Chloe's face froze solid, as if someone had hit the pause button on her life. Her chin was still held high, but her wide eyes were filled with utter confusion and disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend the meaning of that single word. Chad's smirk vanished, his arms falling to his sides as he stared at me in shock. Everyone else looked like they'd just seen a ghost. I even had the presence of mind to notice that Sophie, sitting next to me, had subtly raised an eyebrow, the faintest hint of a smile touching her lips. I didn't give Chloe time to process. In that same calm, almost cheerful voice, colored with a tinge of profound relief, I finished my thought. "You want to break up? Fine by me." "I agree." I picked up a napkin and wiped my hands as if brushing off something dirty. Then I stood up, my gaze sweeping over the untouched platter of shrimp before finally landing on the petrified figures of Chloe and Chad. I offered them a polite, meaningless smile. "I hope you and your best friend enjoy the rest of your dinner." With that, I didn't spare them another glance. I turned to Sophie, my voice returning to normal. "Sorry this interrupted your meal." Then, ignoring the circle of stunned statues behind me, including the one who looked like she'd been struck by lightning, her face a mask of pale, horrified disbelief, I turned and walked toward the door. My steps felt light. To hell with peeling shrimp. To hell with her platonic best friend. I was free. 6. The second I pulled the door open, the collection of human statues behind me seemed to jolt back to life. Unsurprisingly, the first to move was Chad. "Whoa, Liam, dude, don't go," he yelled, his voice laced with a fake urgency that couldn't mask his delight in fanning the flames. "Come on, man. What's the big deal?" Chloe was just kidding. "You can't take a joke." He was practically winking at Chloe, silently urging her. "Go on, tell him off. Watch him come crawling back." It seemed Chad's prodding finally rebooted Chloe's system. "Liam." Her voice was a shaky, high-pitched mess, teetering on the edge of sob. She was genuinely panicking now. "Stop what? What do you mean by this? You don't love me at all." Oh, there it was. The classic guilt trip. It was always my fault, wasn't it? Chloe was the perpetual victim, pure as the driven snow. I didn't stop walking, my hand still on the door handle. A cold smile played on my lips. If you loved me, you wouldn't have agreed to break up so easily, she wailed. You were just looking for an excuse. You've wanted to dump me for a while, haven't you? The more she spoke, the more she convinced herself of her own twisted logic. Her cries grew louder, theatrical enough to move an audience to tears. If you ignored the fact that minutes ago she was fawning over another man. I could picture her perfectly, eyes welling up, pointing a trembling finger at my back, playing the part of the tragic heroine for the entire table. The old me would have dissolved into a puddle of guilt, probably slapped himself for being such a jerk, and then gotten on his knees to beg for forgiveness. But now, not my problem. I didn't even bother turning around. I just stepped out of the room into the hallway. The air out here felt cleaner, less suffocating and greasy. Behind me, I could still hear Chad's phony attempts at peacemaking. Chloe, don't cry, he's not worth it. Liam's being a total asshole. This was followed by Chloe's even more piercing sobs. How could he do this to me? Chad, how could he? The low murmur of the others at the table, trying to figure out what to do next, faded as I walked away. What a circus. My steps were so light, I almost felt like whistling. This was the best breakup ever. I'd only gone a few feet down the hall when I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me, followed by the click of the private dining room, door shutting again. I glanced over my shoulder. It was Sophie. She had left too, and was walking a few paces behind me. When she saw me look back, she met my gaze, gave a simple nod, and then quickened her pace to fall in step beside me. It was getting stuffy in there, she said, her tone neutral, as if stating a simple fact. But there was a clever glint in her eye that told me everything. I got it instantly. Game recognizes game. A real laugh escaped me this time. Yeah, the air quality in there is terrible. Bad for the digestion. We shared a knowing smile, a silent acknowledgement of the chaos we had just orchestrated. Without another word about the drama, we walked side by side toward the restaurant's exit, leaving the soap opera, my thoroughly confused ex-girlfriend, and the whole toxic mess behind us. Man, it felt good to take out the trash. 7. The moment I got back to my apartment, I collapsed onto the sofa, feeling like 100-pound weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The silence was golden. No Chloe bossing me around or whining about something I did wrong. The air itself felt cleaner. I pulled out my phone. The lock screen was still a photo of us from last year, one she'd only agreed to take after I practically begged her. She was barely smiling in it, looking at the camera like I owed her money. How had I ever mistaken that for goddess-like aloofness? Pathetic. I tapped open my contacts, went to the pin conversation at the top. The contact name she'd made me set, My Queen Chloe. I grimaced, then my fingers flew across the screen. Profile, scroll down, hit the bright red delete contact button. Done in seconds. iMessage thread, deleted. Phone number, blocked, then deleted. Venmo friends, unfriended. Instagram, blocked. Facebook, blocked. Even our shared Spotify playlist got the axe. Every digital tie, every last social media connection between us was methodically severed. The whole process was smooth as silk, like I'd rehearsed it 1,000 times, which in my head I probably had. When it was all done, I tossed my phone aside, leaned my head back, and let out a long, slow breath. Damn, that felt good. The world was suddenly quiet. The massive boulder that had been sitting on my chest for 3 years was just gone. I was so light, I felt like I could go run a marathon. I used to think my life would end if Chloe left me. Looking back now, I realized I'd been living in a fog. This wasn't the sky falling. This was the clouds finally parting. As I was savoring the moment, the phone I'd tossed on the couch buzzed with a notification. It wasn't a text, but an Instagram DM. My stomach clenched. My first thought was, seriously, did Chloe already make a new account to harass me? Or is Chad going to try and defend his queen's honor? Give me a break. I snatched the phone, ready to unleash a string of expletives. But when I unlocked it, the message wasn't from either of them. The profile picture was a simple landscape photo. The username, just Sophie. Q. Sophie. I was a little surprised. How did she have my Instagram? Then I remembered we were in a couple of group chats for classes. We'd never spoken directly before. What did she want? Was she here to lecture me for going too far? Or maybe to act as a peacemaker for Chloe? I hesitantly tapped open the message. What I saw wasn't a lecture or a plea. It was just one line of text, followed by a smirking emoji. Used and then tossed aside? I see how it is. Puffed. I burst out laughing. This girl was something else. I'd pegged her as the quiet, reserved type, but her sense of humor was razor sharp. And her tone wasn't judgmental at all. It felt more like my co-star running lines with me after the show. I leaned back, a genuine smile spreading across my face as I stared at her message. This story, it seemed, was just getting interesting. 8. Sophie's message was a perfect curveball. This girl did not play by the standard rules. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Never. My valiant co-star saved me from certain doom. I was just preparing your Medal of Honor. I hit send, then felt a flicker of doubt. Was that too cheesy? We barely knew each other. The typing bubble appeared and disappeared a few times. Finally, a single laughing crying emoji popped up. You can keep the medal. Just don't ghost your getaway driver. Yes, she was rolling with it. I immediately pressed my advantage. Never. Is that what you think of me? You were brilliant tonight. If it wasn't for you, that whole scene would have flopped, and I'd probably be fetching that jerk another beer right now. Happy to help, she typed back coolly. I was enjoying the show and decided to make a cameo. I grinned. So, how was my performance? Did I do my co-star justice? A little over the top, but your emotional delivery was on point and the counterattack was flawless. I'd give you an 8. 5 out of 10. Only an 8. 5. Where I lose points. The napkin wasn't soft enough. Details matter, noted Professor Quinn. Just like that, we fell into an easy, witty rhythm. There was none of the awkwardness of a first-time conversation. It felt more like bantering with an old friend. I was discovering that beneath her calm exterior was a wickedly funny and sharp person who was completely on my wavelength. I had to ask, seriously though, what was going through your head tonight watching that whole train wreck? You must have thought we were a bunch of children. She was quiet for a moment. Then, a new message appeared. Honestly, it was incredibly satisfying. I've been waiting for someone to call Chloe on her crap for years. She treats genuine people like garbage and worships phonies. After watching you put up with it for 3 years, I thought you were a lost cause. Holy crap. She was on my side the whole time. I felt a rush of vindication. A kindred spirit. I'm telling you, I was completely brainwashed. Well, it looks like you finally cleared the gunk out of your eyes, she replied bluntly. I was grinning like an idiot at my phone. This breakup was turning out to be the best decision I'd ever made. I'd shed a toxic parasite and stumbled upon a hidden gem. As we were texting, a new message from her popped up. Hey, you busy tomorrow? It's Saturday. My heart skipped a beat. Was she asking me out? I try to play it cool. My schedule is currently open. What did you have in mind, Professor? I have a dance showcase tomorrow afternoon at the university auditorium. 3 o'clock. She followed it up with a side-eye emoji. Oh, my interest piqued. For that, I am definitely free. The debut of the great Sophie Quinn. I have to be there. Need me to bring glow sticks? Giant sign with your name on it. Just show up and sit quietly, she replied. Don't cause a scene. Oh, and by the way, she added after a pause, Chloe and Chad will probably be there. I think Chad is in one of the other acts. I understood immediately. This wasn't just an invitation to a dance show. This was an invitation to the premiere of Act 2 of our little drama. I shot back my reply instantly. Message received. I will be there to provide moral support and complete the mission. I won't let you down. Okay, cool. Address and time are below. Come or don't. She ended it with an emoji of a cat trying to look aloof. I stared at the screen, my smile so wide it hurt. This new chapter of my life was off to a fantastic start. The next afternoon, I was loitering outside the university auditorium a full half-hour early. I put in some serious effort last night, digging out the one really nice black button-down I owned and spending way too much time getting my hair just right. I wasn't a bad-looking guy to begin with, but 3 years of Chloe's subtle put-downs had destroyed my confidence. After a little self-care, I had to admit I cleaned up pretty well. I spotted Sophie on the steps right away. She was in dance gear, with a loose jacket thrown over top and her hair tied back neatly, showing off the elegant line of her neck. Even in simple workout clothes, her focused, calm energy was 100 times more attractive than Chloe's frantic need for attention. I walked up to her. Professor Quinn, I'm not late, am I? She turned, and her eyes seemed to light up for a second. She scanned me from head to toe, a small smile playing on her lips. Well, look at you. all dressed up. Hey, I've got to make my co-star look good, right? I grinned, moving closer. Nervous? A little, she admitted, though her eyes were confident. Just make sure you clap really loud. You got it. My hands will be raw by the time you're done. As we were talking, a familiar, cloying perfume wafted over. I inwardly groaned. Speak of the devil. Sure enough, Chloe and Chad were walking toward us. Chloe's expression was pure acid as she stared at me and Sophie. Chad looked just as sour, as if I'd stolen something that belonged to him. I guess in his mind, only he was allowed to hang all over my girlfriend. Chloe stopped right in front of me, her voice dripping with accusation. Liam, what are you doing here? I feigned surprise, raising an eyebrow. Wow, small world. Do you own this auditorium now? Do I need to check in with you before I show up? Her face flushed. Her gaze darted between me and Sophie, her tone growing sharper. Are you here to see her? She pointed at Sophie, her finger practically in her face. Sophie didn't say a word, just gave Chloe a placid, indifferent look like she was observing a mildly interesting rock. I ignored Chloe's question completely and turned to Sophie, my voice low and concerned. Are you thirsty? I could grab you a bottle of water to have after you're done. Sophie played along seamlessly. Sure, not a cold one, though. You got it. My blatant dismissal sent Chloe over the edge. Her voice rose in pitch. Liam, I'm talking to you. Chad, ever the loyal sidekick, chimed in with a sneer. She's talking to you, dude. Are you deaf? Have some damn respect. I finally turned my gaze back to Chloe, my face a mask of innocence. Oh, were you talking to me? Sorry, I didn't notice. I figured you and your best friend would have so many secrets to whisper, you wouldn't have time for a nobody like me. I hit the words best friend hard. Chloe's face went white. Chad took a half step forward, but stopped when I shot him a glare. Coward. I was done with them. I smiled at Sophie. Come on, Professor, show's about to start. Look at a good seat. Some people are blocking the way and have no self-awareness. With a light, guiding hand on Sophie's back, I steered her past the two fuming statues standing in our way. I could feel Chloe's furious, dagger-like stare burning into my back. I bet she was about to have an aneurysm. Man, it felt good. For years, I'd been the one watching her and Chad walk away from me. The tables had finally turned, and the view from this side was spectacular. Sophie and I had just found our seats when, like a bad smell you can't get rid of, the two of them followed us. Chloe plopped down in the empty seat right next to me, forcing Chad to sit beside her. Liam, we need to talk, Chloe said, her voice low and tight with a command she expected me to obey. My eyes stayed fixed on the stage. Talk about what? Your shrimp peeling technique? Or should we discuss my beer delivery service? I'm retired from both, so you'll have to find a new guy. She sucked in a sharp breath, clearly fighting to control her temper. When she spoke again, her voice was surprisingly soft, laced with a hint of victimhood. Yesterday, I was just upset. Can't you at least hear me out? Well, look at that. Pigs must be flying. Chloe Vance was actually trying to be reasonable. Too little, way too late. Before I could respond, Chad leaned forward to spew his poison. Chloe, why are you even wasting your breath on him? Look at him, he's found a new girl, and now he thinks he's hot stuff. The old Chloe would have eagerly agreed with him and probably added her own insult. But today, she whipped her head around and snapped at Chad. Shut up. This has nothing to do with you. Chad was stunned into silence, his mouth hanging open. He looked utterly betrayed, as if his most loyal disciple had just committed heresy. I had to hide a smirk. It seemed the best friend status wasn't as rock solid as he thought. Chloe turned back to me, her eyes a swirling mess of anger, regret, and a jealousy she probably didn't even recognize herself. Liam, we were together for 3 years. Does that mean nothing to you? You could just throw it all away? Just then, the announcer on stage called Sophie's name. I immediately sat up straight, pulled out my phone, and aimed it at the stage, completely ignoring the woman having a meltdown next to me. I said to the air, here we go. The main event. Got to get a good video of this. The spotlight hit Sophie as the music began. She moved with a clean, powerful grace that was breathtaking. The entire auditorium fell silent, captivated. I watched her completely mesmerized. I clapped louder than anyone, even shouting, yeah, that was amazing. It was a little embarrassing, but it did the trick. In my peripheral vision, I could see Chloe's face had gone pale. She stared at the radiant, talented woman on stage, then looked at my rapt expression, full of admiration and pride. She must have been contrasting it with the cold indifference I'd shown her just moments before. She suddenly went quiet. It wasn't an angry silence, but one born from a profound sense of loss and confusion. I heard her whisper, so faintly I almost missed it, more to herself than to me. You never looked at me like that, and you never cheered for me with that much passion when I had a success. I imagined her thinking. For the first time, it seemed to be dawning on her that the Liam who revolved around her, the one who treated her like the center of the universe, was truly gone. This wasn't a game. It wasn't a tantrum. He had actually left her. And what's more, he seemed to be thriving without her, finding genuine joy and appreciation with someone else. All she had left was the best friend sitting next to her, who had been silenced by her own harsh words and was now sulking. The contrast was brutal. I could practically feel her trembling with regret. I felt nothing. If anything, I wanted to laugh. You made your bed, Chloe. Now lie in it. The music stopped, and Sophie struck her final pose. After a beat of stunned silence, the auditorium erupted in applause, far louder than for any other performance. Hell yeah, that was incredible. I yelled at the top of my lungs, my hands stinging, completely ignoring the icy glare from Chloe beside me. Sophie stood on stage, catching her breath, the stage lights glistening on her forehead. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and when they found me, the corner of her mouth lifted in a tiny, almost imperceptible smile. Totally worth it. The judges' scores came up. Unsurprisingly, she got the highest marks of the night. She took a bow, looking impossibly cool, and walked off stage. I was about to slip out to meet her at the backstage exit when my phone buzzed. It was a frantic text from my roommate, Mark. Liam, SOS. The code for the senior project is bugging out. The professor wanted a demo in like 10 minutes, and we're all totally screwed. We need a remote assist, man. Please. It was followed by a long string of praying hands emojis. I'd completely forgotten. I was the one who had stayed up all night debugging the final module of our group's machine learning model. The rest of the guys never quite figured out. Of all the times, I glanced toward the backstage door, then shot a look at Chloe and Chad, who were shamelessly eavesdropping. Fine. Time for one more performance. I sat back down, turned my phone sideways, and my fingers began to fly across the screen. Well, look at the genius at work. Chad's snide voice cut through the air. Sophie's not even off stage for a minute, and you're already busy with something else. Guess you don't care that much after all. Chloe said nothing, but a flicker of grim satisfaction crossed her face, as if she'd found a reason to feel superior again. I ignored them, my focus entirely on the screen as lines of code scrolled past at lightning speed. Just then, Sophie emerged from backstage, changed back into her street clothes, and started walking toward us. Chad saw his chance to twist the knife. TSK. The star of the show is here, and you don't even get up to greet her. Bad form, Liam. Before he could finish, I hit the final command. The red error messages on my phone's terminal vanished, replaced by the smooth, clean interface of our project's dashboard. Data visualizations populated perfectly. Done. I let out a breath and held up the phone just as Sophie reached our row. Here, I said casually, showing her the flawlessly running program on the screen. Sorry, just had to put out a fire for my senior project. Almost missed my chance to congratulate the champion. Sophie paused, her eyes widening as she looked at the screen. As a computer science minor, she knew exactly what she was looking at and understood the complexity. Her expression shifted from surprise to genuine, undisguised admiration. You did this, you fixed it that fast. It was nothing, I shrugged, pocketing my phone. I was powered by the sheer force of your incredible performance. The inspiration was flowing. Sophie let out a laugh, a real one, and the light in her eyes was brighter than any stage light. You are such a dork. The words were teasing, affectionate, a world away from her usual cool composure. Next to me, Chloe's face fell. She watched the easy, natural way Sophie and I interacted, remembered the intense focus on my face as I'd worked, and then glanced at the useless lump of a man next to her, whose only skill was stirring up trouble. The chasm between her past and her present had become painfully, undeniably clear. Chad tried one last pathetic jab. Puffed, so you can write a little code. Will you just shut up? Chloe finally exploded, cutting him off with a raw, frustrated anger. Is talking crap the only thing you know how to do? Chad recoiled, his face turning a shade of sickly green. I just smiled at Sophie and stood up. Come on, champ. I believe I owe you a celebratory boba. Double pearls. You know it, Sophie grinned, falling in a step beside me as we headed for the exit. We left them there, stewing in their own toxic mess. I had to admit, showing off felt pretty damn good. The days after the breakup were blissfully peaceful. My friendship with Sophie, meanwhile, was getting closer. We started studying together in the library and teaming up to play games online. She was actually good, a refreshing change from Chloe, who was terrible but loved to complain. I thought Chloe would have finally gotten the message, but I was wrong. Some people never learn. One afternoon, as Sophie and I were walking out of the library, I noticed people giving me weird looks, pointing and whispering. Before I could figure out what was going on, my phone blew up. It was Mark. Dude, big problem. Some psycho is posting on the Campus Confidential forum, saying you were cheating on Chloe with Sophie for months, and that's why you dumped her. They're calling Sophie a homewrecker. It's super detailed and nasty. Are you kidding me? The perpetrator playing the victim? And using smear tactics? I immediately opened the forum app. Sure enough, it was the top post. The user was anonymous, but the post was filled with twisted details and fabricated stories. I saw them on secret dates all the time. Liam was emotionally abusive and forced the breakup. The comment section was a war zone. Sophie was looking at it on her phone, a deep frown on her face. Is she insane? She's desperate, I said with a cold laugh. Don't worry. I got this. I wasn't even angry. This was just pathetic. I went straight to the nuclear option, the folder of receipts I had been quietly collecting for years. Over the past 3 years, Chloe had constantly sent me screenshots of her chats with Chad to prove how close they were. I also had voice memos of her ordering me to run errands for him. And best of all, I had concrete proof of Chad hitting on other girls while simultaneously mooching off Chloe. I'd saved it all, thinking it might one day give me the courage to leave. I never imagined I'd use it like this. My fingers flew across the screen. I started a new thread using my real name. Title: A little story about a best friend in a 3-year masterclass in being a doormat. Image, voice memo, screenshot. I attached everything. The evidence was overwhelming. The timeline was crystal clear. It was an absolute slaughter. The forum exploded. Holy ST, the plot twist of the century. Chad is that big of a scumbag, hitting on all those girls while playing the loyal friend. Chloe is blind. She had a great guy and threw him away for a walking red flag. Serves her right. So Chloe and her friend drove Liam away. And now they're spreading lies because he's happy. Unbelievable. Poor Sophie, getting dragged into this and being called a homewrecker for no reason. The tide of public opinion turned in a matter of minutes. Then, Sophie delivered the finishing blow. She quote-tweeted a link to my forum post on Twitter with a simple caption. The truth speaks for itself. Also, at Chloe Vance, get your boy. He's starting to bother us. By the way, your best friend asked me to the movies last Wednesday night. Want me to post those receipts too? That final sentence was a kill shot. It was pure, unadulterated devastation. Chad's reputation as a campus Casanova was incinerated. My phone rang. It was Chloe, her voice frantic and choked with sobs. Liam, please, take the post down. Do you have to make this so ugly? Before I could reply, another call came in. It was Chad, screaming into the phone. Foster, you son of a bitch. You set me up. Chloe, baby, don't listen to him. It's all fake. I merged the calls, putting them both on speakerphone. Ugly, I said into the phone, my voice like ice. You didn't seem to mind ugly when you were spreading lies about us. Open your eyes, Chloe. This is the best friend you defended. The guy who used you for everything he could get while chasing anything in a skirt. How does it feel? On the other end, Chloe's crying stopped abruptly, replaced by ragged, heavy breathing. Chad was still babbling. Chloe, don't believe him. He's framing me. You're the only one for me. Shut up. Chloe's voice ripped through the phone, a raw, broken scream filled with the agony of betrayal. Chad, you bastard, what did you take me for? I heard a loud crack, like a phone hitting a wall, and then the line went dead. I later heard that Chloe and Chad had a massive, screaming fight in the middle of the quad that afternoon, cementing their status as a campus cautionary tale. Her own friends, tired of her drama and poor judgment, started to distance themselves. She was truly alone. Sometimes I'd see her on campus. She'd always have her head down, walking fast, avoiding eye contact. The arrogant, entitled air she used to carry was completely gone. Did she regret it? I have no doubt her insides were twisted with regret. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I wrapped my arm around Sophie's shoulder, took a sip of her boba, and felt nothing but peace. Ditching the dead weight and starting a new life. This was how the story was supposed to go. Time flew by, and suddenly, final exams were just around the corner. And Sophie and I, well, let's just say we were official. There was no big, dramatic confession. We were just walking home from the library one night, and when the cool evening breeze picked up, I instinctively reached for her hand. She tensed for a second, and then her fingers laced with mine. That was it. She was the one. Being in a healthy relationship was a revelation. No mind games, no walking on eggshells, no constant need to prove my worth. It was just easy. My academic life was also on an upswing. The project I had saved from disaster ended up winning a university award, and the professor was so impressed he offered me a research assistant position in his lab for the summer. The future looked bright. That weekend, our class organized an end-of-semester dinner to blow off some steam before finals. When Sophie and I arrived, the private room at the restaurant was already buzzing with chatter. The moment we walked in hand, a chorus of hoots and hollers went up. Whoa, look at this. It's official. Knew it. You two are always together. You're buying the first round of drinks. I laughed and fired back a few jokes, pulling out a chair for Sophie and pouring her a glass of hot tea. The gestures were effortless, natural. As we were settling in, the door opened again. It was Chloe. She was alone. She wore a simple dress that looked a little worn, and her face was pale and drawn. She paused at the doorway, taking in the lively scene. When her eyes landed on me and Sophie, sitting closely together, our hands intertwined on the table, the light in them just died. She looked lost. No one rushed to greet her. After the forum scandal, she had become a social pariah. Finally, one of the girls she used to be close with gestured awkwardly to an empty chair at the far end of the table. You made it. Sit. Chloe quietly sat down directly in my line of sight. Throughout the entire meal, she barely touched her food. Her fork poked listlessly at her plate, but her eyes kept drifting back to us. She watched me put Sophie's favorite dish on her plate. She watched me lean in, listening intently as Sophie told a story, a wide grin on my face. She watched me casually pick the cilantro, which Sophie hates, out of her bowl and put it in my own. All the small acts of service she had once taken for granted or had barely even noticed were now being given to someone else. And that someone else was thriving, practically glowing with happiness. And I was no longer the anxious guy who lived and died by her moods. I could feel the waves of regret and envy rolling off her, so thick it was almost tangible. But I felt nothing. The past was a closed chapter. To me, she was now just a stranger, a name from a story that was over. After dinner, the group decided to head to a karaoke bar. I stood up and helped Sophie with her jacket. As we passed Chloe's chair, I saw her head snap up, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something. I didn't stop. I didn't even look at her. I just put my arm around Sophie's shoulder and walked out of the room, laughing at something she said, leaving Chloe and all her baggage behind for good. The night air outside was cool and clean. Sophie squeezed my hand. Feel better? I grinned, tightening my grip on her hand. Better than ever. The person you once took for granted has become someone you can no longer reach. That feeling? It was absolutely priceless.